Hello, welcome back to another video. I hope everyone is doing great. So a while ago, I made a video about creating my Kubernetes environment that I have in my home lab downstairs running on some Intel NUCs. And it got really popular and some people started asking some questions and it kind of got out of date and stuff like that. And there's actually a better/quicker way of doing things that I do now. So this is basically a remake of that video for what I do currently and what you can do if you want to test stuff on Kubernetes or you want to mess around, learn Kubernetes, whatever it is. There's options like Minikube and stuff like that, but if you actually want a running cluster of multiple nodes or you have extra laptops laying around or you want to buy some mini PCs or whatever like I do and just mess around with Kubernetes and try and deploy your stuff on Kubernetes, this would be the way to do that. So first of all, what you see on the screen right here, I've showed before in other videos, but this is called Proxmox. It's an open source operating system that runs as a hypervisor. So you can put it on an old laptop, you can put it on a mini PC, you can put it on anything, and it runs as an operating system, and it basically similar to anything like VMware Workstation and stuff like that. It allows you to spin up VMs, LXCs, all that kind of stuff. So an LXC is what we're going to be using. I like using them. They're Linux containers. So similar to what you would think about Docker, but Docker containerizes at the application level. The LXCs actually containerize one more down. So you're still sharing the kernel and all the dependencies are shared, but that operating system is actually part of the container. So you can run multiple different containers, multiple different operating systems and applications and all that kind of stuff. It just drops basically one or two, depending, layers lower than like Docker would, for instance, at just the app level. So what I have here is I have two nodes. These are each a Intel NUC mini PC in my home lab that just have base Proxmox installed on them. There's no like high availability or any of that nonsense with Proxmox. We're just keeping it super simple. So there's each of these is a mini PC, and then in the data center, I just join them using the clustering thing. So you just like join them together using a token. It's super easy. It takes like 2 seconds. And I have some stuff running to do with the demo, and we'll make another Ubuntu machine, an LXC container, just so I can show you what I'm talking about. But basically, you want to make as many containers as you want for workers and masters and that kind of thing. And I've talked about him in other videos, but there is a YouTuber named Techno. He actually does Twitch streaming too. So I should say content creator, not YouTuber, but content creator named Techno that you should follow. His details will be in the description along with his doc sheet here. And he has a YouTube repo, or a GitHub repo that has all of the information that you need here to set up stuff for Ansible. So you can one-click with Ansible and deploy K3s with MetaLB load balancing and everything you need to go out the door to get Kubernetes running on VMs that you spin up in Proxmox. So how we're going to do that is following these docs almost to a T, but some of it is actually easier than this says. These have been updated, but it's actually even easier than some of these say. So first things first is on each of the Proxmox nodes. So on my PVE and PVE2, you have to, if you're going to use LXC containers, I should say this, if you use base VMs, you don't need to worry about this, but if you use LXC containers like I do, you have to check this. This came out of the box for both of mine with the newest install, so you didn't have to do much about that. Those modules were loaded, but you have to disable swap and you have to enable IP forwarding. Those two things, and that's on each Proxmox node. Not on every VM. So on PVE, you go into the shell and you run those commands like they say here. Just those two. Now, all this kind of stuff that he says you have to do in here, he says you have to do it in there, but actually the updated Ansible templates do it for you. Inside the LXC containers and updating configurations and all that kind of stuff, it all happens for you. So it's super nice. You just have to run those two commands up here right away. And this link right here is actually in the documentation, and it's also in this is his repo right here, K3s Ansible. When you're doing your stuff, all of your stuff will go in inventory here. You just clone this sample one over, and this is all in the docs. And we'll go over this, but in here is also the link if you're looking for the link to that. Down here where you talk about Proxmox LXC stuff, it gives you that gist link, so you can go see those steps to follow, but you really only need the first two. So anyway, now we're going to start going in order. So if you're going through the documents, there's actually a YouTube video that goes along with it, but I'm pretty sure the YouTube video is still the YouTube video for like the old setup. And a few things are a little bit different, but pretty much the same. So the prep is basic. You can use Cloud Init and spin up actual VMs if you don't want to use LXC containers. I'm using LXC containers, but basically you want to git clone the repo, and then you want to basically make sure you're copying over that Ansible config, and you obviously need Ansible before this. He even links the installation instructions to go follow his guide to download Ansible. You download the Ansible requirements, and these are literally just copy and paste. And this is into the machine that you want to, so like my home machine, for instance, like this is a Windows box, whatever, but I'm running on WSL. But this is all running on that machine, not on the cluster or anything yet, right? So, because this is all what's going to have Ansible on it and all that kind of stuff, and you're going to have all your Ansible playbooks and that kind of thing. So after that, this was the command I was talking about. So he has a folder called inventory sample, and you basically want to copy it into inventory my cluster, which I already did here. Right? It's right here. So here's sample and his stuff, which is just a sample. And then here's my cluster stuff. And that's basically where you're going to do all of your editing. You don't edit anything else except this stuff that's in my cluster. Everything else works out of the box. Right? So you go down here, and the next instruction is putting in your nodes. Now, again, this will be one of the steps that's different depending on if you're using LXC or not. So in your host.ini, these are where the IP addresses so these IP addresses are of the actual LXC containers or VMs themselves. And then only if you're using Proxmox, LXCs, Linux containers, which I am, do you have to put the 2 IP addresses of your actual Proxmox node as well. And then this doesn't change. This you leave the same. So I have 2 mini PCs running Proxmox, and then these are the 6 LXC containers that you can see here. The 1, 2, 3 here and 1, 2, 3 here. So they're actually, I purposely just like split them evenly so you can show that they're across different, actual like machines and all that kind of stuff. So there's 3 LXC containers here and 3 LXC containers here, and they each have their own IP address on my network, and that's what these IP addresses are, these 3. So I just picked, all of them are the same, all 6 of them are the same, so I just picked 3 of them to be masters, because if you put less than 3 here, it won't do HA, but if you put an odd number here that's meant for HA, this will also automatically give you HA master nodes. So if one goes down, they'll quorum and they'll pick a new one, and as far as you're concerned, it will give you a single VIP, like a virtual IP, for your Kubernetes API server, and that's what will go in your Kubeconfig to use Kubernetes. So you won't actually like have to swap IPs or anything, but basically all of these are keeping it highly available for you if you put the right number of master nodes here, 3, 5, 7, whatever, so they can quorum up here accordingly. If you just put 1 here, everything will still work, but you will just have 1 master node, and if it goes down, your cluster goes down. Right? That's why I have 3 here. And then again, you can have as many nodes are like your workers. You can have as many as you want. And truly, you can have as many of each one as you want anyway. And then these are my Proxmox clusters, because I am going to set this to true because I am using LXC containers. So for this, how you want to set up your LXC containers, I'll make another one here. You want to go look up I spelled it wrong, Proxmox helper scripts, and it's right here. And you'll get to this page right here, which is helper scripts to do anything in Proxmox. It's amazing. You can do all kinds of stuff in Proxmox and anything else. But what we're looking for is operating systems, Ubuntu LXC. You copy this command. We'll bring it back into my PVE. Let's put another one on PVE2, for example. We'll paste it in, and I'll run it, right? So what this will do is it'll say, this will create a new Ubuntu LXC, proceed, yes. It'll load, use default settings. We'll say advanced, because there is one thing we want to make sure happens. So we want to do advanced. The other ones don't really matter, but the biggest one that we have to set is privileged. So we have to set our LXC containers to privileged. So it says make selection, use a spacebar, default Linux distro. So we want Ubuntu, yes. I'm using 2204 just because that seems to be the widely respected one here. So it's vitally important here that you make this privileged. And you can change it after you create it too, but it's just easier to do it right now. So if you do privilege, set a root password for it, whatever. Again, I end up setting SSH keys so Ansible can do its thing really easily. So I don't like use password authentication for it. I actually just turn it off. It's going to set the next available container ID. So I mean, that's fine. You can change it if you want to. Just obviously you don't want them to overlap. You don't want 2 100s or anything like that. Hostname, I'm obviously just doing Ubuntu with a number, so we'll make this Ubuntu 7. Disk size, let's make it the same as everything else. So we'll do 20 with 2 cores. RAM, we'll do 2048. Use the same bridge. You want to use DHCP, leave that blank. I disable IPv6, you can do whatever you want. I leave that blank, 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 enable root sh access, and I like to enable verbose, ready to create. Now it will happen fast for me because I've already downloaded the template. You can see using local for template storage and using local VM for container storage. It updates the template list and I don't have to re-download it, so it just does the thing. And it's gonna start basically making the LXC container. You can already see it here being initialized. And that's it, it's gonna make it. Now, again, if you don't wanna use password authentication for Ubuntu, I'm also gonna show you super quick how to just like flash your key onto it when you make it, or whenever you make any of the boxes here, because you can use it with Ansible and give it a password and have it authenticate with passwords and stuff like that. But obviously SSH keys either kind of make it easier and you're throwing around less passwords and whatever. So when it's done building here, I'll show you. But until then, so this is building. I'm not going to add it to everything or whatever to the playbook. I could though, and maybe we will, we'll see. But basically you add it, stuff like this, we went over it. And then this is basically, he talks about a lot of the things, but basically tells you if you're not a Kubernetes expert and you don't know what you're doing, like just don't change a lot of this stuff, right? He talks about why he didn't add some things and how you can add them later and stuff like that. And then he basically says to spin stuff up, that's the command to use. Now, it's gonna be a little more complicated for us because we're using LXCs. So in your my cluster here that you spun up, you want to go Proxmox. This proxmox.yaml is just, that's it. All it will do is your LXC SSH user, which will set. And so this doesn't obviously need to change. Now here, there's a couple things you need to be aware of. First, I don't change this. This you want to change, right? So this is the user that you're logging into your LXC containers with. Mine is root because I enabled root sh access and it's logging in as root. So I made it root. Again, you can argue it's not the right thing to do, whatever. That's how I'm doing it right now. So this, put it to your time zone, whatever. This is your interface. You can change that if you need to. You normally don't out of the box. And then this is versions for everything. You shouldn't need to change this. This you can change if you want to. This will be your internal IP space, like internally to your cluster. You can mess with this if you want to. I don't. This I changed because this is like my peer addressing for my gateway on my actual home network is 192.168.1.1. And then I change it here too for the BGP peer address for kubevip to match my gateway for whatever. And then this is the next thing you want to change. So this is that virtual IP address, that VIP. So this is what will go into your Kubeconfig. This is the one IP address that's actually backed by highly available clustering that you will set it to. So again, this, all you want this to do is you want it to land on your home network. So again, mine is 192.168.1.0/24. So I use an IP that's not already being taken by something else. Obviously you can change this if you want to, because, you know, security. None of this is all stuff he says not to change unless you like really know what you're doing. You know, some of these are required, some of these aren't. So I don't mess with any of them. I don't mess with the Kubevip version. I don't mess with anything with the MetalLB stuff, except for, again, the IP range has to fall in your network and be unused. So this is basically giving it 10 IPs. So this is if I deploy something and I want to see it, those 10 IPs is where it will show up on with like node ports and stuff like that. So MetalLB is like going to be your version of like if you were to use Amazon's Kubernetes service, it will spin you up an ALB load balancer. This is what will actually do it for you in your home lab, right? Now here's the LXC part. If you're not using LXCs and you're just using VMs, you can ignore all this. It doesn't matter. If you are using LXC containers, you have to put this to true. Put this as your SSH user that you're going to actually SSH into Proxmox with. Again, mine is root. And then you need your list of container IDs, right? So obviously to find that, you can see them on your thing here. I have 100 through 100. Well, I had 105. Now there's 106. So, because as you can see, my thing completed. So we're here and we can log into it. We have another Ubuntu server. Now, if you want to copy keys, there's an SSH copy ID command that you can use. It's very simple. If you want to. Again, don't have to use SSH keys, but it's very quick, like one command to throw your SSH key on these servers remotely. Again, I'm just not going to add this to my thing. I'm just going to keep it as I have it. But so these are my IDs for my LXC containers. So you can see here 100, 101. So if there's something different, add them there. But this is just your list. And then again, I don't mess with anything else. I don't mess with any of the registries and I don't use an HTTP proxy, right? So from now, we should be good to go, right? So now what we have to do is when you go look at the documentation here, you can run this. Now, again, it will actually run this by default, and there's a little script in here called deploy.sh that just runs this, and it actually works. So if you you can just do it this way too. If you follow the instructions so far, then the deploy.sh that just does site.yaml will just work. So when you run it like this, it will gather facts. They should all connect. Now, and again, you can just Control-C it like that to set it up. Let me make this a little bit bigger here and see if we can do it that way. It's connecting to all my things, et cetera, et cetera. Now, my home network right now is being a little iffy, of course, because there's someone outside working. So when it fails like that, that won't happen to you. But I actually have to try a couple times just to get it to work, just because of the people actually outside working at my house, because of course they're going to do it right now. So of course now you see I got a few more connected. So this is something you won't have to mess with, but I'm going to have to mess with, of course, because we're going to make the video fighting through the internet gods. But that's okay, because we're going to fight them back. So normally what will happen is they'll all connect okay, and it is still fighting me. So you run deploy here like this, and they all work. They all come back as okay, hopefully, please. So now we'll run deploy, and it'll all work. It'll all go through, and you can see stuff happening. Stuff is happening really fast, right? So now all the assertions have passed, all this stuff. So now it's just doing all the tasks in this Ansible playbook, right? So we're here doing everything, changing, and you can read each one that happens. But it goes pretty fast, to be honest. It's not that long running of a thing. And there's going to be a point at the end where it's going to reboot stuff, and then it's just going to sit there and wait for everything to connect. So some of the other things while that's happening, some of the other things to go over is, again, these two things had to happen on each Proxmox host, but not LXC container. And then all this stuff that happened here was done by the new templating. So that's fine. Now, when you go here, that's literally it. This is the last step we'll have to do when everything's working, is you can SCP, this will be root for us, not Ansible user. From this can be any of your master nodes, and this will pull your kubeconfig out of the cluster and put it onto your local machine. That way you can kube control things. Pinging this IP that you're pinging was, again, that VIP that he defined and we defined in the thing, and then hopefully we should be working. And then we're going to get some Nginx stuff rolling with the Metal LB load balancer, and we're going to hopefully get live, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a fantastic time. So when you see this, I kind of freaked out the first time, but when you see this is actually supposed to happen. And depending on how fast your servers are and all that kind of stuff, it will happen. So what's happening is it installed everything, and then it rebooted all the nodes. So you're basically just waiting for K3S to come online. So I know it says failed retrying. That is not a bad thing, okay? I freaked out the first time I ran the thing. I thought I ran it wrong. I thought it was failing, all this stuff, especially because it was failing multiple retries. Again, like you can see, it's failing like multiple times, and it waits a few seconds or whatever, and then it retries. But all this is doing is, like you can see here, it's checking the K3S init service. So it might fail. Like it will do 20 retries, and I've never had it not catch. So now you can see it caught. So now boom, and it keeps going, right? So just a small thing. I'm glad I caught that on video, because I actually didn't have that in script for this video. But when you see that failing retrying thing, it's okay. That's supposed to happen, right? We're all good. So now we're going to keep going. Again, we're just waiting for this to finish. And then we're going to deploy just a basic Nginx, loading page to show that the load balancing stuff works and all that kind of stuff. But it shouldn't be that much longer here. Again, if you haven't checked out Techno Tim while we're waiting for it, go check out his page, because even after you set up the cluster, he goes over a ton more stuff. If you want to put Rancher on your cluster, if you want to put traffic on your cluster and deploy your own certificates, you can have HTTPS and all that kind of stuff. He does all that on his channel using this template as a starter, right? So once you have this template, if you're interested in more stuff, as far as like deploying web servers and stuff, all that stuff is there. My next thing, small plug, is we're going to be using flux.fluxcd, not flux.cd, just fluxcd, to deploy a bunch of stuff using GitOps to the thing. That'll be a future video. But anyway, we're ready to go. This is all good. So now, like I said, you can take the thing here, this SCP command, you can copy this, put this in here. And again, you have to change both the user and the IP address. So mine is going to be 1 dot, and you can go into your host, pick out a master. So mine will be 45. And again, it's not Ansible user, it's going to be root. And it should pull it in. So now I should be able to kube control get nodes. And there we go. You see I have all 6 of my nodes. 3 of them are control plane master nodes. So I am HA there, right? And we're actually going to try it and see what we can do. So he gives some good stuff here. In example, there's just a deployment and a service YAML, and all this does is just Nginx. You can look at it, but it's just simple like deploy Nginx on HTTP. That's all it is, right? And that's just to make sure you have it working. Whoop, I want to pull this up. So we're just going to, again, keep going. You do the get nodes. Now right here, you just apply the deployment and apply the service. I mean, those are basically the basic things. So we're going to apply the deployment. Now what you will see too is obviously that should give us some pods. So it's creating the containers. One is running, the other ones are creating. Give it a second, come back. 3 Nginx pods are running. Sweet. Now we need the service to hopefully put them over the load balancer, right? So the next thing we're going to do is come here and do the service. That service was created. And if we want the IP address to see if our load balancer is working, we can describe the service. And right about here, my load balancer ingress, it's going to give me an IP from that range. Remember, if you go here and I'm looking here, I have my range right here. So the first one is 20. So it gave me that first one of 20, 192.168.120. So I can take that, go back here, and hopefully get it to work. There it is. Welcome to Nginx. So cluster's running, Nginx is running, it's being load balanced through MetaLB, so we can access our services. So you can spin up, node ports and stuff like that, and you're ready to go. Now, there's a couple other scripts in here that you can use. One is the reboot script, which runs the reboot playbook, which will just reboot all the nodes, obviously, hence reboot. And if you don't want Kubernetes, or you're done, or you want to uninstall it all so you can add some nodes and then re-flash it with new nodes or something like that, there's a reset here, which just brings you back to base Ubuntu nodes, right? So then you're ready to go. So I think that's about it. Again, future videos will go over using the Kubernetes cluster and some of the stuff I do, but I put a video out like this before. This is the simpler, quicker version. All you need is some old hardware or newer hardware if you're interested. Put some Proxmox on it, put up as much LXC containers as you want, 100, 10, 2, whatever, and give them as much space as you want. Download Techno Tim's thing, use it, using the steps we just went through with basically you're changing hosts and you're changing this all.yaml file in your my cluster, and that's it. Run the playbook, Kubernetes. HA if you want it, load balanced if you want it, ready to go, right? Future versions, we're going to talk about GitOps, Helm, and stuff like that, and how I use some of that stuff to put either my services on it that I'm doing for bug bounty automation and stuff like that, as well as some stuff I depend on, so Nats or whatever that may be, and doing that all through GitHub and GitOps, so it happens automatically, updates happen automatically, stuff like that, because that's some stuff I've been playing around with recently that I want to share with you. But this is a cool way to get a Kubernetes environment up very simply, very easily. If you have issues, let me know. Twitter, Discord, etc. But for now, have fun with Kubernetes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.